By our lovely pals over at PragerUwU. Mismatched, a PragerUwU short, which implies that these were two people that didn't need to be dating in the first place. But bad titles, Prager. Bad titles.
Howdy.
Hi, you must be Will.
I'm Will.
I'm Jordan. Nice to meet you.
Jordan.
Generally speaking, I'm a pretty average young woman in America. I'm a social justice activist. I attend a lot of climate change rallies. And when I'm not working to advance the causes of socialism, I write postmodernist feminist slam poetry.
Okay. So all that tells me is that this is... Okay, so what would my impressions of this person be in the very beginning? Bear in mind, I've actually dated somebody like this before. So, it was actually my first interaction with this more, like, extreme side of things. So, my first impression seeing this person would be, hey, you obviously have a lot of interests, and they're all very political. Do you perhaps have any interests that are apolitical? Anything that you can use to maybe get away from stuff like this, because this is the type of thing that can develop into an obsessive idea, right? If you're constantly worried about activism, you're constantly worried about climate change, you're constantly worried about these things, then you will end up hyper-focusing on those things, and it can become incredibly unhealthy. So I would say that, hey, are there any other things that you enjoy as well? Not there's anything wrong with the things you do enjoy. Those things are all cool. But it seems like maybe you might not have a whole lot of balance. But that's not what Prager's trying to do here. PragerUwU is trying to frame this as in, hey, if anybody is concerned with these things, they're unreasonable. They're an unreasonable person. You're not going to enjoy your time with them. Except, that's kind of... I did, up until the last year, I did enjoy the relationship I had with the person who was like this, because we got to have many debates, because I was on the opposing end of most of these issues before. I didn't agree with anything that they said before until we had discussions and discussions over years, and I started analyzing this stuff. It allowed me to be incredibly introspective. Not to speak ill of my exes. So, again, while my first impression would be you don't seem to have a balance between leisure and activism, the activism that this person is engaging in, I don't see as a problem. Like, at all.
This looks good.
Okay, so... maybe that... Okay, I know I'm overanalyzing what's supposed to be a comedy skit. It's a comedy skit, right? So it's not supposed to be taken super literally, but I also know it's PragerUwU, so giving charity is not something I'm about to do, because they don't deserve it. So, if your date says, hey, I am interested in X, Y, and Z, and you realize that you're not interested in X, Y, and Z, there's a couple things you can do. Thing A, suck it up and have a conversation with it anyway, or with the person anyway. I meant to say about it anyway, and then I meant to also say with the person, and it came out as with it. Yay, brain. So, have a conversation with the person anyway, because it is highly likely, that there are interests of yours that you have that this person will not share as well. And you two can either educate each other on your interest, you might find something new, or you might have to do a give and take in conversation, where 10 minutes of conversation, talk about climate change activism, talk about postmodernism. Hey, ask her, hey, so I understand that you try to promote socialism, but why is that? Because if you're a capitalist and she's a socialist, obviously you two have different ideas. Or, she brought up slam poetry. Say, hey, I know you write slam poetry, but does that mean that you also perform it? Do you go to any events and perform slam poetry? Like, you can still get information out of this person instead of just going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't. Like, also, let's point out that Prager frames this as that's how the relationship begins, with him just dismissing any of the things that she likes. And then their relationship continues on, apparently.
Oh, something smells like disgusting.
Oh, it's probably me. I haven't showered in a month to conserve water.
Silly.
So, that one, I got two things to say. One, shower more often than a month. Come on. Hygiene. Hygiene's important. You're going to get yourself sick. It's also kind of gross. Like, it's really inconsiderate of the people around you. When I was working at Quick Trip, when I used to be an employee there, I was a manager there. We actually did have a manager who didn't shower for weeks on end, and you could tell as soon as they opened the door that, oh, he's in. I'm not going to say his name for obvious reasons, but you could tell when he was coming in just based on the smell. But here's the other thing I need to say. That doesn't happen that often. And by that often, I mean almost at all. Most people around you generally have okay to average hygiene. Like, they might not be great, it might not be amazing, but it is at least hygiene. Whereas this is a complete, lack of hygiene. Also,
Probably me. I haven't
can we say that if she hasn't showered in that long just to conserve water,
showered in a month to conserve.
her hair would not be like that. Like,
Oh, something
look at her
smells
hair.
like disgusting.
Oh, it's probably me. I haven't showered in a month to conserve water.
Her hair would not be like that. Her hair would not be like that after a few days. It's a giant straw man. Like, over and above the fact that, yeah, this is something that I would find concerning in a partner, past that, the likelihood of you encountering somebody like this, when this video is called Trying to Date in 2019, as if dating is just like this anyway, awkward. Also, let's point out that they specifically show only the woman as being the unreasonable person, whereas the guy, of course, it's PragerUwU, Paragons of Masculinity, they're showcasing, oh, he's the reasonable one. He has to be. He's got the dick, according to PragerUwU.
See what we got. Ooh, Pocahontas.
You realize that's one of the most racist movies in the Disney industry.
Okay, but if she doesn't want to watch it because of that... Wait, so this means that this person actually does media analysis, right? That's a conversation. That's a whole conversation that you can have. Like, that's literally just... Okay. So when she says that, hey, Pocahontas, the movie, is incredibly racist, you can then have a conversation with her about, okay, so you say that it's racist. Let's dig into that. So instead of spending today watching a movie, let's spend today having a conversation about media analysis and about representation and about how certain things are or aren't important. And you can get into things like how the Pocahontas story isn't actually as racist as she might think, because the entire story is a classical tale called Who's the Savage. It's a very, very common trope. You can look it up. Who's the Savage is a story where you have a primitive society that are shown to be the savages, but over the course of the story, when you see the more technologically advanced, usually invading civilization, you can see that the invading civilization is actually the immoral set of savages, whereas the primitive civilization that was framed as the savages turns out are actually very honorable. You can do that. You can have those types of conversations based on this, as opposed to just dismissing, which seems to be what's actually happening in PragerU's analysis. They're just completely dismissing the other person instead of going, okay, how is Pocahontas racist? All right, are you familiar with the Who's the Savage trope? Let's have a chat about that. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a night sitting on the couch talking to each other about media and the different ways in which media is framed. Like, but again, it's PragerUwU. It's PragerUwU. So nuance isn't their best thing.
Lord of the Rings, have you seen it?
The movie with perhaps the most all-white male cast ever. Honestly,
Lord of the Rings having an all-white male cast, except that the books also had generally lighter-skinned people in it as well for the most part. So that's what you would expect, which, again, if you want to have a conversation about should we replace people in film just because we don't have as much representation as you think we should, then that's an interesting conversation to have. There are certainly instances where you shouldn't. But again, I don't think that the cast was all white. Hold on. Do 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 do. In Middle Earth, must all hobbits be white? Hold on. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. So no, it's been years since I've seen it, but yeah, it seems that there is a very minuscule representation. But again, that is a conversation that can be had. You guys can have a chat about that, about whether representation makes a story better. When is representation necessary? What is the difference between a gender swap and a whitewash? Or not gender swap, but a race swap and a whitewash. You can do that. You can have that conversation. It may be uncomfortable for you if you've never considered these things before, but guess what? I spent years having those conversations, and it was some of the most enjoyable time ever. It's helpful.
how dare you suggest that?
You probably.
How dare you suggest... Okay, so this sounds like if these two people were dating, and I get that I'm over-analyzing comedy at this point, insofar as we can even call it comedy. But while analyzing this, all I can see is that this entire relationship began with this guy dismissing this girl, and then her continuing to say, "Yeah, no, let's see if things will improve. Let's see if we can actually continue forward," with just utter dismissal. So we have the female character who's fixated on social justice. And then we have the male character who's dismissive and doesn't actually pay attention to his partner. And that sounds like you've got a recipe for an abusive relationship on both ends. So the fact that PragerUwU is framing this as the guy is reasonable when he's actually engaging in harm for his partner by completely dismissing anything that she is saying. Or not partner at this point, I guess they're just dating. But still, what he's doing is not being honest. He's dismissing her constantly. Like, that's not healthy. It's not healthy for the guy either. But that's not how Prager frames it. Realox says, pish-posh relationships are supposed to be just two people agreeing. Bull crap. Absolute bull crap. Thank you for the $5 donation, and I know that wasn't jest.
I'm gonna get the steak and the extra cheesy mac and cheese.
Wow, okay. Not vegan, good to know.
This is one I actually agree with. I'm gonna get some people in my audience upset, but when a vegan tells me that I must also be vegan and then engages in shaming, that pisses me off. Now, granted, I have not really met vegans who do this that often. I know they exist. I know they do. And even vegans who I have disagreed with publicly about how they are engaging in activism for veganism, Alex O'Connor, Cosmic Skeptic, is one of them, I have sat down for a meal with Cosmic Skeptic and other creators at the same time. This wasn't just me and Alex. But I sat down for a meal and didn't hear a single comment about what I was eating during the meal. nor did I hear them comment to anybody else at the table about what they were eating during the meal. So again, this doesn't really happen all that often, but PragerU doesn't care about whether it happens all that often. They care about taking whatever the extreme is and saying, this is what dating is like.
No, too white. Too sexist. Too heteronormative.
Okay, so if you don't want to watch a sexist movie, that's understandable, right? Like, you don't want to watch a movie that's literally just going to make you uncomfortable the entire time. Cool. But if you are a male and a female, and you are dating, then I'm assuming they are. PragerU doesn't really deal in, like, the difference between gender and sex, so I would have to assume that they're both male and female, just because Prager and nuance don't go together very well. So Prager would be framing this as, yeah, no, she doesn't like this being heteronormative, and yet she's also heterosexual, like she is the target audience. Or I don't know if she's hetero, but I would assume, based on Prager, that this character is. So, I don't know. It just seems really, really inaccurate. And I get, again, it's comedy. It's not supposed to be analyzed this much, but they had a literal team of propagandists build this, so I'm going to pick it apart anyway.
You use plastic straws?
Okay, so this one I've actually had personal experience with. Okay? So, I used to be a type of person that said that, well, even if you took plastic straws away from people, it wouldn't inconvenience them too terribly much. Also, if the plastic straws were offered at the restaurant, most people are just going to use the plastic straws. I have been in a situation where I've been at a restaurant and a friend of mine has said, oh, they use paper straws. That's amazing. And everybody at the table, because we all live with Erin, and I don't want to get into her disabilities. That's her business, not mine. But one of the things that she has pointed out to me and educated me on is the fact that plastic straws have the ability to bend, which most other straws do not really have the ability to do very well. And that alone is one of the most important things about those straws. Also, because they are plastic, bacteria doesn't grow on them and in anywhere near the capacity that they can on paper straws. This means that people who have autoimmune disorders and people who have problems with energy or problems getting up can actually enjoy drinks when they are laying down without having to worry about being tainted by them because of bacteria growth. These are very important things. Even metal straws. We actually have some metal straws at the house. Metal straws usually don't bend down to the extent that they need to when somebody is lying down. So again, somebody's got a disability. It prevents them from moving terribly much. Can't really benefit from a metal straw. And even so, metal straws are also not super ideal for people who have autoimmune disorders because it's very hard to clean a metal straw completely versus disposing of a plastic straw and grabbing a new one that is already clean. So, this one, I recognize that PragerU, this is one of the few things they're doing that actually is accurate, and I personally have encountered something like this on more than one occasion. So, they're all, also, yeah, metal in general is dangerous as well, because if you've got somebody, as an example, let's say somebody is prone to seizures, right? And their teeth snap shut when this happens. If they have a metal straw that cannot yield to their teeth, the metal straw can crack their teeth. It can just straight up break the tooth. Whereas a plastic straw will conform to the teeth. The paper straw might be destroyed in this process, or at least the end that you're trying to get to, and now you have a choking hazard, whereas the plastic straw generally would just conform. There are, as much as I hate to say it, of all the plastics we need to do away with, plastic straws, definitely not one of them right now. There is no feasible alternative currently that functions in the same way as beneficially as they do. So, at least, and this is the thing with a video like this from PragerU, we actually have an opportunity to have conversations about things like this that we otherwise wouldn't be, because with all the stuff they're dishonestly framing, they all invite different conversations. So thank you, PragerU, for, through your propaganda, allowing me to educate people on silly shit. Not that this is silly shit.
Maybe I should just pick what we watch. Play The Handmaid's Tale.
So, what's wrong with that? If your partner wanted to watch a movie with you because they wanted you to experience a story that they enjoy, and then you have that same thought, you want to help them experience a story that you enjoy. So you want to play The Handmaid's Tale because it is informative on certain aspects of culture where women are concerned. But PragerUwU frames it as he's going, yeah, I give up. But that ends up kind of screwing over PragerUwU in this because, again, they're trying to portray the guy as reasonable, but all they've done is portray the guy as dismissive. His partner is just as excited to show him something as he is excited to show her something. And instead of having a compromise or a conversation, he's just giving up and acquiescing. He's enabling any of these behaviors that Prager is framing as problematic. Like... And even then, I do think that there's something else PragerUwU did here where they said, hey, she didn't want to watch X movie because it's incredibly sexist, but as Tyrannospec said in the Twitch chat, but wait a minute, she wanted to watch A Handmaid's Tale. The only difference is Handmaid's Tale is sexist in being informative. But I can see the point. There was a point made about rubber straws in the chat as well, not in the Twitch chat, but in the YouTube chat. And my response to rubber straws are that rubber straws, especially if you bite into a rubber straw and create a cavity in the straw for any amount of time, those straws can actually have bacteria grow on them that otherwise wouldn't grow in a reusable plastic straw, which, again, creates problems for people with autoimmune disorders. The problem basically boils down to there's not a perfect solution.
Should I be jealous?
Yeah. So what do you...
That was the one bit of actual comedy in here. That was the one bit of relatable comedy that has come out of this entire thing. And yes, you should, because that tree is way more massive than anything you've got in your pants. I am 100% certain of that.
What do you do for a job?
You know, I'm an entrepreneur here in LA, businesses.
So
and
you
such.
believe in capitalism. Capitalism is literally what's destroying our society and causing so much inequity. How can you be okay with that?
And I also read...
So, I'm going to quote Lenin real quick. All right? Because this is an example of somebody who, and granted, I recognize that this might actually be aiding in PragerUwU's argument. But to quote Lenin, if you want to hang the capitalist, you have to buy the rope from the capitalist first. So ideally, you buy the rope and then hang the capitalist. That's what you do. If you want to construct a guillotine, you must engage in the production that is already currently set forth and use that to construct that guillotine. This is a fairly understood thing. You cannot just start your own society elsewise and then take down capitalism. That's not going to work. You're going to have to work from within the system because the other options don't exist. And I understand that might actually work more in PragerUwU's favor, that the leftist in this conversation doesn't understand basic tenets of critical theory. But again, if her point is going to be, hey, you want to be an entrepreneur? I don't like that. Cool. You could have the same problems as somebody who works in a slaughterhouse or a prison system or anything like that. You can have those problems with their job. But at the end of the day, people are going to have to work in order to survive, and that's what they're going to have to do. But this is PragerUwU trying to build up the most extreme straw man. The likelihood that you would find every single one of these points in as extreme as they are being portrayed in a single person is really unlikely. But again, it's PragerUwU.
I had a really interesting piece from my college professor this week about how the orcs are actually supposed to symbolize illegal immigrants. So what a commentary on our society, really.
Yeah, I was reading this really.
Yeah. And the guy is just sitting there going, I don't want to listen to this. Because the guy at PragerU is showcasing in here is apparently scared to analyze media. That's basically what I'm seeing here. So when she's going, yeah, no, my college professor wrote a paper about this piece of media and analyzed it through the lens of our society and saw that, hey, this says a lot about X or Y. And he's like, I don't want to engage with X or Y. X and Y are scary. You get 2 starters in X and Y. X and Y takes place in France. That's terrifying. So, no, when I'm seeing this, I'm seeing a guy who literally doesn't want to actually analyze any of the shit that's put in front of him. And that sounds like it actually works more against the male than it does the female in this case.
Interesting report that straight white men are statistically the ones who are destroying the environment the most.
That's it. That's it.
What?
So I will say that she's not wrong. But the problem is that when you say it like that, it sounds as if the straightness or whiteness of the individual was the problem. That's the thing that led to them doing X, Y, or Z horrible thing. As it so happens, though, it's literally just people who have the most money and control the most industry, that just happen to be straight white men right now for the most part, they're the ones that have more power because circumstantially that's where we find ourselves. And the people who have the most power are the ones who can cause the most damage. But when you say it stupidly, which is what Prager showcased, it sounds much worse. But here's the thing with PragerU, with all PragerU propaganda. Their goal is not to show an accurate representation of the opposing side. Their goal is to create an extremist strawman and then point to that reductio ad absurdum that they've built, and instead of using it like the reductio is supposed to work, they'll point to the reductio and go, aha, look! Behold! The enemy! It's here! It's evil! Don't touch it! It's bad! That's what PragerU does. That's all they've done. By the way, if you ever want to be upset at PragerU for anything else, remember, they are considered a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Therefore, they don't have to pay taxes or report their books. Now, it gets worse than that. When you consider the fact that not only are they a 501c3, and therefore do not have to report their books to the same capacity that a for-profit organization would have to, if one of the Koch brothers, there's only one now, oops, if the Koch brother decides that he wants to send a sizable donation to PragerU, that sizable donation is now a tax-deductible one because he has sent it to a 501c3 nonprofit. PragerU advertises specifically that your donations to us are tax-deductible. So the rich can send money to the apologetics department for the rich to create propaganda for them. And the government looks at that and goes, yes, this is fine. This is tax-deductible. Welcome to the world we live in, everybody. PragerU is a non-profit organization.